Today is a very special day. I think you can tell from the person sitting next to me. Most of you will recognize this is Kyle Gellis of Warped Cigars. Kyle, I'm so honored to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's my absolute pleasure. I feel like this is actually a pretty pivotal moment for us. I've wanted to work with you for a very long time, and finally the stars aligned. I've been dealing with Scott for a little over a year now, and we talked about this project for quite a while, and here we are. We have our own Cloud Hopper, Privada exclusive for now.
For now.
Yeah, and this is a 6x46.
466.
I gotta tell you, so simple, the band, yet I love it. Every time I look at it, I smile. It's very... it's just got a lot of class about it. And so do you.
Appreciate
and that's
that.
something that I've always, kind of seen from the sidelines, and it's been a big part of the reason why I wanted to get you in here. So,
Well, I'm happy to be here.
well, thank you for taking the ride up from West Palm.
It's not that bad. Listen, I went to UCF, so it's a little.
Okay.
I knew the route.
I didn't know that. I did not know that.
The
So
route
you-
was very memorable. I haven't been here in like 3 years probably, so like driving up, you're like, this is the exact same route.
That's very cool. I'm glad that we could conjure up some memories for you.
You did indeed.
So let's we should cut into one of these and just have a organic conversation
Sure.
about your career and where things started and where they're going. From the beginning, you've been involved in the blending process from day one, it sounds like.
Yeah, I've been blending since 18.
Wow.
Yeah, when I first walked into Titan.
Okay.
Yep.
So you went down to El Titan de Bronze in Miami. You
Yep.
spoke to Sandy, and she
I
was
did.
like, "Who the hell are you?"
Essentially, yes.
Right.
Yes.
She's great. I love her.
Yeah.
And so, what did you say? Like, what was the goal? What made you want to be there in the first place? Where?
It wasn't necessarily that. It was like back when I was 18, you had Caliocho was full of little cigar factories.
Yeah.
Every one of them said no.
How long ago was this?
Oh, this was 14 years ago.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, I was 18, so 32 now.
Okay.
And
cool.
so walked down there, went to Caliocho. I'm an
You're
hour.
32.
32.
32 years old. You have your own cigar brand that's been very successful, and a wine company, which we're going to talk about in a moment.
Yeah, that is correct.
Good for you, man.
Thank
I'm
you, thank you.
impressed. Jeez, I'm a late bloomer. Okay, so you were into cigars at 18?
Yeah, my dad got me into it when I was a little kid.
Okay.
So essentially, he was a smoker, so I'd cut and like light the cigar for him, and instead of like sending me away, like in today's world where, they're trying to, pass some crazy laws and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can't smoke in your car if your kids are in the car, or whatever the case is, whatever some craziness. My dad would tell me about cigars from a consumer standpoint, what he liked, what he didn't like, flavor profiles, all that type of stuff. And so I learned from a very young age. When I was 16, he gave me my first cigar,
Wow.
Monte Cristo No. 2, for Habanos. So I
Dope.
grew up listening and hearing about talking about Habanos, smoke Habanos. And then when I was 18, I was like, well, I want to learn more about this. And I just hopped in my car and drove down to Little Havana and went from factory to factory saying like, hey, like I want to learn more about tobacco, about cigars, how to blend, how to make cigars.
Wow.
And everyone said no. And only one factory said yes. Obviously, that's Sandy. And so since then, Sandy and I have, been working together since then.
Were all the other people that you approached male?
There was really only one female factory.
Her.
Sandy.
Yeah. Do you think that had anything to do with the maternal aspect of it? Maybe she saw someone that
She saw the vision.
Okay.
So when I explained to her what I was trying to accomplish,
Okay.
she understood it. And
Wow.
so since that aspect, it's always been the game that we have is that, we strive for quality, we strive for excellence every single time.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. And so, what was that process like while you were there? Like, what'd she say? Like, okay, well, first you're gonna do X, Y, Z. Like, what did you do?
No, she just kind of threw me in the bail room and
Okay.
just said get to work. And then obviously back then Willie was still working there. So, this is before his Drew Estate days and stuff like that. So, and then you learn from the rollers, and it's a very organic process. You have to actually be down there and actually learn. And so when I was coming to UCF, I would actually drive down every Friday morning, and I would stay all weekend. And then I'd drive back up Sunday night to
Wow.
go back to school. And I did that for my entire duration of
Wow.
college. Long process, but you learn from the ground up in tobacco. If you're not touching it, you're not holding it, you're not working with it,
Right.
you're not learning.
Sure. So, how long was it before you decided, okay, I've got a blend that I think could be a brand? Where were you in your life? Were you, was it around that time, or did it take years to get to
Oh
that
no,
point?
I started selling them when I was 18.
Okay. All right. So you went down there, you made cigars, you were like, okay, you would taste the cigar, this is what I want.
Yep.
Let's move forward with this. And then how would you sell them?
We started on cigar forums actually. So we were doing direct to consumer before we became wholesale level.
Wow.
Because obviously back then, if you're a no-name brand, this is 14 years ago, you know, they didn't really want to tell you. Still needed sales reps at that point.
What were the forums?
Cigar Asylum, BOTL, and then there was became puff.com at that point.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was really Cigar Asylum that kind of like pushed it forward.
Yeah.
And then obviously I'm at school, and then eventually you come to a headway in your life where you're like, where do you want to put all of your eggs in one basket?
Wow.
And then it was just warped and pushed forward, and then worked with Sandy for Colmena and Oso, and then Don Ronaldo, and then Sandy's the one who actually introduced me to Anganorsa. She introduced me to Eduardo, Paul Palmer, and then shortly thereafter flew to Nicaragua, started working with them.
Paul's awesome.
Yeah, Paul's awesome.
Like
He's a library of information.
Yeah. And he's like the quietest guy in the meeting too. But I always look at him like when we're in meetings, I'm like, you know more than anyone here, and you're the quietest one here.
Very true.
The people who were really into this were called cigar nerds.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked about this before, and I think that I feel like the crew that I'm a part of, or like the people that we've ushered into this, we call them cigar heads. And like there was a definitive line in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
And the cigar nerds were very rebellious. And I don't like using that term. It's just the term that they kind of dubbed themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They were very rebellious, and they were rebellious for a reason, because the 90s saw like a lot of the over commercialization, let's call it. Like, you know, people were waiting in lines to get cigars. They were selling anything that they could sell. There was a tobacco shortage, or, you know, so I'm told.
It was the boom.
Yeah. And so the boom brought out a little bit of a negative element. And so I feel like these cigar nerds of the early 2000s kind of were like rebelling against that. They didn't want the bullshit. They didn't want the ad with the chick in the Porsche with the cigar, and you know, and you were able to, as a very young guy, come out in that, go to one of the most thorough factories in this country, and pull through that with respect. I mean, there's a lot of respect on your name from that generation and that like era of cigars. So did you receive a lot of blowback during that time? Were there a lot of naysayers, like, who the fuck is this young guy that's just, you know, kind of making cigars and thinking he can sell them direct to consumers? Was there a lot of...
No, not really. I think like what it was is that I was so under the radar that I didn't really care. It wasn't until I became, you know, we started to shift the model to more of a wholesale direction. And then they were like, oh, like, well, he won't be around for a while. Or he'll be around for a short time, but he won't last, this and that. And then as you progress down the years and you start getting acknowledgement, they go, well, he got lucky. And then obviously the years progress forward and they say, well, he's an overnight success. And that's like, well, that's 14 years ago. Like, I've been doing this.
Right.
You know, saying that, you know, we came out of nowhere or whatever. But in reality, you know, we've been around. It's just that the acknowledgement came later on. And I think that it was just how we approached it, because we approached it in oh no, I'm fine, thank you. We approached it in a very different manner. You know, we didn't get sales reps. We didn't have the old model. I decided from, you know, a young age that we can do it differently. This industry needs to change in terms of its infrastructure and how things are done, because everything is changing.
Yeah.
So instead of marketing to sales reps to try to get them to carry my product to go into a shop that to force a sale, you know, I marketed to the consumer. I gave them the information. I gave them what they wanted. I gave them knowledge. I pulled the curtain back, and that got a lot of flack. You know, and what happened is the consumer then said, wow, I really want to get behind this brand because they're showing me what this is actually like.
Wow.
The cigars are great. And then they went to the shop and said, hey, we want you to carry Warped. So it's very different when you have a consumer come in and say, hey, we want you to carry this brand. So we're very fortunate that consumers grabbed a hold of the brand from the beginning, and we make sure that every day that we go to work and we make something, that it's the top it can be, because they are the reason we are where we are.
Right.
You know, it wasn't a sales team, it wasn't anything like that. It was the consumer going to bat for us, so we go to bat for them every day.
I looked at your story the complete opposite for some reason. I looked at it as that you were a sweetheart of retail, and then you went very direct to consumer, and some of the retailers didn't like that, but I had the wrong information.
Yeah, no, we started direct to consumer and then shifted. and then started going that way and going to the consumers because we were part of social, quote unquote, social media before it really took hold, before Instagram came out. Because I learned that from my paintball company when I started when I was 14. And we were on PB Nation. All
right, hold on.
I feel like a fucking loser over here.
Yeah, you are.
I'm a fucking loser.
You are a loser. Okay, so you tell me about this paintball company you started when you were 14.
When I was 14, I was playing tournament paintball, Division I paintball and expo.
Wow.
And so I started a headwear company that, because we're down here in South Florida.
Yeah.
So patterns and all that. In the paintball industry, your look is almost as important as your play style. So we started making headwear out of different camos and stuff like that, and selling them at the paintball field and use PBN or Paintball Nation to sell it. And so we had an early look at what social media was before them, utilizing forums to grow, and then we eventually became the largest manufacturer and distributor of paintball headwear in the country.
Wow.
And that ran all the way up until I was 18, and then obviously in 2008 the housing market crashed.
Right.
And so that brought down the entire industry of paintball as a whole, and I was like, well, this isn't going to last forever. And obviously, I was smoking cigars at that point, got in the car and went down. And then I carried the name Warped over because that was Warped Customs, was the paintball company.
Oh, shit.
Because that was my nickname when I played paintball. But when people ask, well, why don't you change the name for the cigar industry? I'm like, well, what I'm trying to do with Warped is that I'm trying to make another cigar brand, but it's a cigar brand, but different. Because if a floor, let's say, it's a warped wood floor, it's still a wood floor, but it just looks a little different.
Sure.
So we took that model and ran with it.
We got it with the paintball. We got it with the cigars. Yeah, you're entrepreneurial, but you're not just throwing up businesses. You're learning the craft from the consumer point of view first. Then you're going in from the actual manufacturer point of view, and then you're putting out a product saying, I'm putting my stamp on this.
Well, we manufacture and we blend everything myself. So everything comes from my palette, sourcing our own material, going in there. We're in the warehouses, we're in the bales. We're sourcing every single bit of material. So it's a little bit different. It's not, we have our hands in every single aspect of the manufacturing process. So, but you're learning about it from passion at that standpoint. When I went down to Sandy, I wasn't looking to sell the cigar immediately. But what happens is, like you said, entrepreneurial nerve take hold. And you're like, well, I'm going to try selling this, and let's see what it can do. And I used the model that I used for Warped Customs, utilizing forms to go direct to consumer to sell it in the beginning, and then that was your proof of concept.
Wow.
And then utilizing that to push it forward.
Forums.
Forums,
Right.
yeah.
Wow. How long were you selling Warped cigars before you went to wholesale? And I don't want to know the blend, but is there a specific... Your cigars have things in common, right? I wouldn't say, like, it's like a good artist that knows its sound kind of thing, right? Like, some are different than others, but there's a collective situation there. Is there a specific style of blending or type of tobacco that you really enjoy and use often?
It's stylistic to us. Like, our signature is to be different. So, like, I grew up smoking Habanos. So we go for that medium body, that fruit, and that spice. So that's what we call it. We could put our thumbprint on it, and that's a Warped thumbprint.
You got fruit and stuff, right?
Correct.
Okay, there you go.
Rather than going to earthiness and spice and power and all that, we don't really do that. We have blends that offer that, but there's always an underlying tone that is warped.
So how long selling in the forums before you get to a wholesale point? And who, obviously, like Sandy helped you get into blending cigars. Who helped you get into the wholesale or selling to the retailers?
We kept doing what we were doing. We just marketed to consumers, and they did it for us.
Really? So they started going into stores
and
saying,
asking
hey,
for the brand, and then the shop owner would call us and say, hey, our customer said that you should come pick us up. And, we're like, okay. Like, they're like, well, we haven't tried your cigar, send samples and this and that. And so that's the way it is, and that's the way it still goes.
You're also into wine, apparently.
Yes, I would say so.
So the cigar business is doing its thing. Where does this come from? How did this come about?
Well, funny enough, I actually went to Napa Valley for the first time. I've been making wine since 2014.
Okay.
So I went to Napa Valley for the first time to actually learn the farming, to see if we can bring anything over from Napa Valley farming, which is more sustainable and biodynamic, if we could bring that to tobacco. Can we make better tobacco through better farming?
So you went there and researched up tobacco.
That is correct. And then obviously when you get there, you meet the farmers, And then you start telling them what you do in tobacco. They're interested in what you're doing. You tell
They
them.
want your product, you want their product.
And then you start meeting winemakers and stuff like that. You start tasting wines with them, and then they're like, hey, like, you know, you actually kind of have a palate, and that's a good thing to hear from a winemaker. They're like, why don't you try, you know, blend some wine, and then they're like, well, you should try making wine. And then obviously, once again, like I said, you have entrepreneurial nerve take over, and you're like, well, let's give this a whirl.
Right.
And so that's really how it happened.
So how long ago did this brand, it's Blue Monster.
Blue Monster, yes.
How long ago did this start?
This Blue Monster started in 2016. This is actually the inaugural vintage.
Wow.
So
this bottle.
This exact bottle. Yep. This is
Wow.
the 2016 vintage.
I'm saving it forever. You can buy it on eBay in 10 years from now. Okay. So 2016, it all came to fruition. All of the relationships you built, the blending experience, everything, and you say, okay, I'm putting out this bottle. Now, I noticed that the name is Blue Monster. Brought my head, being from cigars, in a total different direction. When I looked into the art on the bottle, I noticed it's a Mastiff?
Yeah, it's my Cane Corso.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cane Corso. And so this is a dog from Africa or Canary Islands?
No,
or
he's
something?
from Italy.
Okay, Italy. Okay, and they're like huge. They look like huge.
They're
pit
yeah,
bulls.
they're massive. There's obviously no pit bull lineage in them at all. These are actually their ancestor was the actual Roman legion war dogs.
Wow, and
So
they're huge.
They're massive. Yeah,
Yeah.
They can range from 130 pounds all the way to 170, and they
Wow.
move like Black Panthers.
Wow. So where is the wine going? Where is it being sold? What can we expect from the wine brand?
It's DTC. So obviously,
What does that mean?
Direct to consumer.
Okay.
So we use a mailing list. We don't produce a lot. I mean, obviously, we lease 1 acre of vine in Napa.
You lease 1 acre, and you that's something that I've always wanted to do with Privada. But okay, so you lease 1 acre, and whatever that yields that
make wine.
year,
Yep.
that is that vintage.
That is correct.
And so, what does a bottle cost? It's got to be expensive, then.
This is $225.
Okay,
Yep.
so it's not cheap.
No, it's not cheap. No.
Wow.
No, because you're making one in Napa Valley. You're making fruit from a mountainside. You know,
Right.
you're crushing in Napa Valley. You're putting French oak, new French oak, 100%. So like, you know, winemaking gets very expensive very quickly
Sure.
because you're in Napa Valley.
Sure. So, lastly, I want to talk about the Hacienda Gran Robusto. That's going in the Brian's box.
Okay.
So we're going to see we've seen nothing from Warped, and all of a sudden we're going to see a little spurt here. We got a Privada cigar, could be an LCA cigar, but Privada cigar for now. Hacienda in the Brian's box, which is like sort of a new old thing for us. Can you tell us about that blend?
So it's Nicaraguan Puro, obviously, for Mango Orsa. The actual profile came from inspiration was from an Italian dish I had in New York, where it has like kind of, it was this pasta dish that had like pistachio and lemon in it. And I was sitting there, I was eating, it was actually with one of my guys, Michael. We were in New York doing a photo shoot. And I'm like, I think I'm gonna try to blend this. Yeah.
But it had pistachio and lemon.
Pistachio, lemon, and pasta, and like I think like a buttery kind of sage to it.
Sounds nice.
And so like I wanted to blend something with citrus and nuttiness and things like that that was bright and different because I hadn't tried that in a cigar before.
Wow.
So that was kind of the journey with that one. And then obviously La Hacienda itself, I wanted to trademark that brand since I was 18. And when it actually came time to make it, I couldn't believe that the mark was still available. I mean, literally the translation is the estate. So like you would think that that would not be available, but it was, and I've been wanting to make it since I was 18. I actually found the other day when I was going through the what I call the library on my computer of all the designs and records. I actually found the first iteration that I did of the design, and I'm like, man, it does not look anything like what it looks like now. But like the name reigned, and obviously we have it now, and it's been a staple for Warp for years.
Huge. Tell us about this blend.
So Cloud Hopper, so that's specific to 466, or Cloud Hopper is the brand?
As the brand, where did that come from? And then let's talk about this blend.
So cloud hopping essentially is like, you know, I travel a lot, my little brother travels a lot, and like I wanted to do a cigar like kind of the homage to travel. So it's like, you know, that's where the word cloud hopper came from. You know, I spent a lot of time when you build Warped and you build a company, you're in the air a lot.
Yeah.
Obviously now it's a little bit different.
Sure.
But, you know, so I wanted to do something that was more medium bodied and just kind of a little bit different. And so Cloud Hopper, and just had a little bit more of a price, you know, difference in Warped, you know, from what we normally do. So it's around $7-8 MSRP usually for the 53 or the 485.
Okay.
And just getting the blending room, getting the bale room, find the tobacco, put it together, and really just try to create something that could be used almost as like an everyday kind of morning thing. And, you know, it's been incredibly popular for us. People love it. And it's been once again it's a staple for Warped, and we're just trying to grow it. This is the first time we've ever done an exclusive size for it for anyone.
So, like, I didn't know a ton about Warped. I've smoked Warped cigars, mostly on recommendations from people who I respect. So I do want to say that. It's like, oh no, you got to get into Warped, and I never really like adapted the brand in my daily smoking, or I just didn't explore your brand as much as I probably should have. And so when we got these, I had tried a few of your cigars that were a little spicier. And we got these, and I was like, you know what? This is kind of like the perfect morning cigar. But we're so used to Connecticut and morning, which is something that I want to try to break out of, as we move forward in this. Connecticut doesn't necessarily mean morning.
Yeah.
But it just so happens that that's the way, like, people think about cigars right now. And this is a beautiful morning, especially a morning where you might put something in your coffee, a little, you
want to have an Irish morning?
Yeah,
okay,
right,
I get
exactly. This is a pretty perfect cigar for that. And Clark smoked it the other day, and the next morning he texted me and he said, all I can think about is smoking this as my first cigar of the day.
Perfect.
So yeah, tell me about the other ring gauges in this. There's
the 53, which is a 42, and then there's a 485, which is a 48.5. So,
where do you come up with are these old Cuban numbers? Where does the numbers come from?
The 485 comes from the size itself, so 48 by 5.
40,
So,
okay,
yeah.
got it, okay.
And the 53 actually comes from an old Cuban size from one of the Dunhill special selections.
And so this is the 466, 46 by 6.
Correct.
Cool. Very cool. Well, we are honored to be the first people to ever have this, and hopefully we will be the only people to have it for some time. And I hope that we do the brand justice. I know that our members are super passionate about learning about cigars, and that you are a part of that next chapter in cigars that can bring it to a culinary level. And so, again, I'm honored to have the cigar. I'm honored to have you here with us, and I appreciate you taking the drive up here. And I look forward to working with you in the future.
That'll be great, man. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. These cigars are fantastic. I don't even know what to do with them first, so enjoy.
Take care.